I never imagined that the cold wind of a late autumn morning would be the last thing I'd feel before stepping into the place where I'd say goodbye to the person who gave me life. The air outside the funeral hall tasted like rain and dust heavy, suffocating, as if the whole world already knew what I was trying not to accept. My mother was gone. People say grief hits you in waves. For me, it wasn't waves. It was a single, crushing weight that settled on my chest the moment I walked into the room and saw her photo displayed above the casket. She was smiling in that picture, gently, warmly like she always did when she thought no one was looking. It wasn't the smile she forced for family gatherings or holiday photos. It was the smile she kept for private moments, the smile that said, "Everything will be all right." But everything wasn't all right. Not anymore. I stood there, frozen, as the murmurs of relatives and family friends blended into a dull, indistinguishable hum. I could hear them condolences, whispers, comments about how strong I looked, but none of it reached me. Everything around me felt blurry, out of focus, like I was trapped behind a pane of glass, watching someone else's life unravel. My hands trembled. I didn't want anyone to notice, so I shoved them deep into my coat pockets. I didn't want to cry in front of all these people. They didn't understand. Not really. Not the way I did. They saw my mother once a month, maybe once a year. They didn't sit with her on nights when she couldn't sleep because the pain in her chest was too sharp. They didn't hear her try to laugh while holding back coughs. They didn't see the fear in her eyes when the doctor used words like complications or risk. I did. I saw it all. And yet, somehow, I still felt like I hadn't done enough. That guilt, it clung to me like smoke. I kept replaying everything I could have done, everything I should have done. If I had visited more, if I had stayed longer, if I had pushed harder to get her better treatment, maybe she would still be here. The thought alone was enough to make my stomach twist. A soft voice broke through the fog in my mind. "Are you all right?" I turned to see Mrs. Sanderson, my mom's old neighbor. She looked at me with kind eyes, the same kind of eyes my mother had. I forced myself to nod. "Yeah, I'm fine." It was a lie. We both knew it was a lie, but she didn't press. She just gave my arm a gentle squeeze and moved on. I walked closer to the casket, each step heavier than the last. The closer I got, the harder it became to breathe. My mother's hands were folded neatly, her face peaceful in a way she rarely looked during her final weeks. The makeup artist had done a good job, too good. She almost looked like she might open her eyes at any moment and scold me for looking so miserable. "Stop frowning," she would say. "You'll get wrinkles worse than mine." A weak smile tugged at my lips at the memory, but it faded almost instantly. I leaned forward slightly, resting my hand on the edge of the casket. "I'm sorry, Mom," I whispered. My throat tightened. "I'm sorry I wasn't here enough. I'm sorry I didn't notice sooner. I'm sorry I didn't push you harder to go to the hospital that week." My words fell apart, trapped behind a rising swell of emotion. She couldn't hear me, but I needed to say it anyway. Someone cleared their throat behind me, and I straightened up. My uncle had entered the room. His footsteps were sharp, purposeful, like he was walking into a boardroom instead of a funeral hall. He gave my mother's casket a brief, mechanical glance before turning his attention elsewhere, shaking hands, exchanging greetings, smiling politely. He didn't look sad, not even a little. I felt anger simmer in my gut, but I pushed it down. Today wasn't about him. Today was about her. More people filled the room. A cousin I barely recognized hugged me too tightly. A former co-worker of my mom's placed flowers near the casket, and a family friend I hadn't seen in 10 years told me how brave I was being. I nodded through all of it, responding when I needed to, pretending I was present when I wasn't. My mind kept drifting, slipping back to memories of Mom cooking breakfast at 6 a.m., humming her favorite song, or scolding me gently when I stayed up too late playing games as a kid. Memories hurt differently on days like this, sharper, heavier. When the priest started the service, I finally took a seat in the front row. My legs felt weak, like they could give out at any moment. The priest's words washed over me. Talk of eternal rest, peace, heaven things that were supposed to comfort, but instead made the whole situation feel even more final. My heart wasn't ready for final. I kept staring at the photo of her smiling, and the more I looked at it, the more unreal everything felt. There was a part of me, stupid, childish, that kept expecting her to walk into the room, shaking her head, telling everyone that there had been a misunderstanding, that she was fine, that she just needed rest. But she didn't walk in. She never would again. My throat tightened until it hurt. I lowered my head and covered my face with my hand. For the first time that day, I let a single tear fall. Just one. I didn't even wipe it away. I let it slide down my cheek and fall onto my sleeve, because in that moment, pretending to be strong felt impossible. The world kept moving around me. Whispers, footsteps, the priest's voice. But I sat there in silence, drowning in a grief I didn't know how to carry. And even though I didn't know it yet, this funeral, this quiet agony, this moment where I thought I was completely alone, was only the beginning of a storm that would change everything. The service ended slowly, like a candle burning down to its last bit of wick. People stood up, shook hands, exchanged polite words about my mother's kindness, her strength, her patience. I listened to some of it, ignored most of it. My mind was exhausted, too exhausted to process anything except the fact that she wasn't sitting beside me. As the crowd began to drift toward the exit, the room felt colder, emptier. I lingered near the casket, reluctant to let this last moment with her slip away. I wanted another 5 minutes, another 5 seconds, anything to delay the reality waiting outside. But reality didn't wait. I heard footsteps approaching behind me, slow, heavy, almost theatrical. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. My uncle always walked like he wanted people to hear him coming, like each step was part of a performance. He stopped beside me and looked at the casket for maybe half a second. Not long enough for grief, barely long enough for respect. "Sad day," he muttered. His voice was flat, empty, as if he were commenting on the weather. I didn't respond. I wasn't in the mood for small talk. He cleared his throat. You holding up?" I still didn't respond. I just stared at my mother's folded hands, wishing I could hold them one more time. A moment passed before he said, in a tone far too casual for the moment, "We need to talk." The back of my neck tightened. That sentence never led anywhere good. I turned slightly, just enough to see his face. His expression wasn't sympathetic. It wasn't even solemn. He looked impatient, like he had somewhere better to be. "What do you want?" I asked quietly. My uncle let out a sigh, as if I were the one inconveniencing him. "It's about the house." My stomach dropped. Not now. Not here. Not in front of my mother's casket, but he kept going. "You know your mother wasn't in her right mind the last few months," he said, crossing his arms. "She was confused, forgetful. You remember." I clenched my jaw. Yes, she had bad days. Days where the medication made her groggy or when fatigue clouded her thoughts. But she wasn't incompetent. She still recognized everyone. She still paid her bills. She still made decisions. And she was still my mother. My uncle leaned closer. "She and I discussed the house, you know. She promised that once she was gone, I would take care of it, that it would stay in the family, my side of the family." I stared at him, stunned. "What are you talking about?" He exhaled sharply, the way people do when they're tired of explaining. "I'm saying the house should go to me. I'm the one who visited her most." A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "You visited her twice in the last year." His eyes narrowed. "That's not the point." "No," I said, stepping toward him. "That is exactly the point." He stiffened, visibly irritated. "You're young. You've got your own life, your own apartment, your own job. You don't need that house. But you do?" I snapped. "Is that what you're saying? That you deserve my mother's home more than I do?" His expression changed then, subtly, but unmistakably. He smirked. Actually smirked. "Yes," he said, "I do." Something inside me broke a little at that moment. Not because of the house, but because this was happening here, today, when my mother wasn't even buried yet. "You have no shame," I whispered. He shrugged as if the comment didn't matter. "It's simple. You weren't around. You didn't do enough. Everyone knows I was the one checking in on her." My fists tightened at my sides. He was lying, and he knew it. The neighbors knew it. Her doctor knew it. Hell, even the mailman probably knew it. I wanted to shout at him, to tell him everything I did. Every late-night drive, every hospital visit, every bill I paid when she was too embarrassed to ask for help, every meal I cooked for her when her hands were too weak. But grief has a way of stealing your voice, and right then, I didn't have the strength to argue. He took my silence as an opportunity to twist the knife deeper. "I'll make it official soon," he said. "There are ways to get the court to understand she wasn't thinking clearly during her final months. I'll contest whatever papers she left behind. Probate favors stability, and I'm the stable family member." I stared at him, disbelief turning into cold, simmering anger. He wasn't grieving. He wasn't mourning. He wasn't even here for her. He was here for the house. "For once," he added with a satisfied smile, "try to be mature about this. Accept that your mother wanted me to have it. You don't deserve it." My breath stopped. Those words, "You don't deserve it," hit harder than I expected. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You think you can just take everything because she's gone?" He grinned. "Watch me." Then he patted my shoulder, the way someone might pat a dog, and walked away, leaving me standing by the casket with my blood boiling. The doors closed behind him, and the room fell silent again. For a long moment I just stood there, gripping the back of the nearest chair, trying to steady my breathing. The anger, the grief, the disbelief, it all blended into something icy and cold. My uncle had always been selfish, but this was a new low. I turned back to my mother's photo. "Mom," I whispered, "what did you leave behind? What did you want?" I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't letting him steal her memory. I wasn't letting him rewrite her story. And I sure as hell wasn't letting him take her home. Not without a fight. After the confrontation at the funeral, I left the hall feeling hollow. The sky outside had darkened, though it was still early afternoon. Thick clouds hung low over the parking lot, swallowing what little light remained. It felt fitting, like the whole world was sinking into the same gray grief I carried inside me. As I walked toward my car, the weight of my uncle's words kept echoing in my mind. "You didn't do enough. I visited her more. You don't deserve the house." He said them with such confidence, like he believed every lie that came out of his mouth. Or maybe he didn't believe them at all. Maybe he just hoped I didn't have the strength to contest them. But grief can be a strange thing. Sometimes it weakens you, and sometimes it sharpens you, pushes you, ignites something in you. As I stood by my car, staring blankly at the steering wheel, memories began creeping back into my mind like ghosts trying to take shape. They weren't grand memories. They weren't loud or dramatic. They were quiet moments. Moments no one knew about except me and my mother. I remembered the night she called me at 2 a.m. Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. "Sweetheart, I don't feel right. I think something's wrong with my chest." I didn't even put on proper shoes. I just grabbed my keys, ran out the door, and got to her house as fast as I could. I still remember how she sat on the couch, clutching her chest with trembling fingers, trying to smile through the pain because she didn't want to scare me. "I'm fine," she kept insisting. "I'm probably just overreacting." She wasn't. She never overreacted. If she said she didn't feel right, it meant she was hurting more than she'd ever admit. I helped her into the car and drove her to the emergency room. I stayed with her until the sun came up, watching monitors beep and nurses check her vitals. When the doctor said it wasn't a heart attack, but severe stress and exhaustion, she apologized to me for bothering me, as if saving her life was a bother, as if losing sleep mattered more than losing her. My uncle didn't show up that night. He didn't call the next morning. He didn't visit that week. I didn't even tell him what happened because I already knew the answer. "Oh, well, she's fine now, right?" That was always his response when she needed help. Then came the time when her medication became too expensive. She didn't tell me at first. I only found out after I noticed unopened letters piled on her table. "What's this, Mom?" I asked. "Nothing important," she said too quickly. But it was important. It was hundreds of dollars worth of medication she had stopped buying because she didn't want to be a burden. The truth broke my heart. I paid for the next month's supply without telling her. When she found out, she cried, not because she was upset, but because she wasn't used to anyone taking care of her. She'd spent her whole life taking care of everyone else. My uncle didn't offer to help. He didn't even ask how she was doing. But he bragged at family gatherings that we all pitched in for her. He took credit for things he didn't do because for him, the appearance of caring mattered more than actually caring. And there were smaller moments too ordinary for anyone else to think about, but ones that carved themselves into my memory because they showed who she truly was. Like the time she called me because the power went out during a storm, and she didn't want to sit alone in the dark. I drove over immediately. We sat on the couch, wrapped in blankets, listening to the rain pounding on the windows, while a candle flickered on the table. She told me stories from her childhood, stories I had never heard before, because the darkness made her nostalgic. I remember her laughing softly, her eyes glowing in the candlelight. She looked so peaceful. For once, she wasn't the tired, overwhelmed woman the world saw. She was just my mom, warm, soft, alive. My uncle didn't come that night either. He didn't even know the power went out. He would have shrugged and said, "It happens." As these memories flooded my mind, I realized something that cut deeper than grief itself. My mother never wanted anyone to know how much she relied on me. She never wanted to be someone's burden. That was why she didn't tell people how often I helped, why the neighbors didn't know, why relatives never heard, why my uncle could lie so easily. Because she protected her struggles as fiercely as she protected everyone she loved. And now, she was gone. She couldn't defend herself. She couldn't speak the truth. She couldn't stop my uncle from twisting the past into something convenient for him. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, breathing slowly, trying to steady the mix of anger, sadness, and frustration boiling inside me. My uncle wasn't just trying to take a house. He was trying to erase everything I'd done, everything she and I had shared, everything that made our bond real. He wanted to rewrite history, make himself the hero, the devoted relative, and make me the absent son. But I wasn't absent. I was there for her even when no one else was, especially when no one else was. As I replayed those memories, something inside me shifted. The fog of grief didn't lift, not completely, but it thinned just enough to reveal something solid beneath it. A resolve, a quiet, steady fire. My mother may have hidden her struggles, but she didn't hide everything. She kept things, notes, letters, receipts, lists. She documented more than she let on, and part of me wondered, what else did she leave behind? Because a woman like her, organized, thoughtful, intentional, didn't leave this world without making sure her son would be protected. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to discover something she left behind. Something that would change everything. Something my uncle never expected. And it would all begin with one hidden envelope. The day after the funeral, the house felt heavier than I remembered. Not physically, though every piece of furniture seemed to press down on the floorboards, but emotionally. It was like walking into a room where the air itself remembered her. Her scent still lingered in the hallway. That soft mix of lavender lotion and freshly washed sheets. The kind of smell that makes you pause, close your eyes, and forget for half a second that she's gone. But reality has a cruel way of reminding you. Bills on the counter, half-finished tea on the kitchen table, a blanket still folded over the couch from the last time she sat there. The house was frozen in time, waiting for someone who would never walk through its rooms again. I took a deep breath and started going through her belongings, not because I was ready, but because someone had to. My uncle was already circling like a vulture, talking about settling things, which everyone knew was code for claiming whatever he could. I wasn't going to let him be the one to touch her things. I began in the living room, opening drawers, sorting through papers, making small piles keep, donate, toss. Most of it was old receipts, weekly grocery lists, birthday cards she never threw away. She had a sentimental streak, and I loved that about her. As I moved through the rooms, something inside me kept whispering. She left something. You know she did. Keep looking. I didn't know if that was intuition or hope, but I listened. Hours passed. I checked cupboards, shelves, drawers, boxes under the bed. Nothing unusual. Nothing unexpected. Nothing that looked like the kind of thing that could prove my uncle wrong or protect what she wanted. But then, as I stepped into the kitchen, I felt it. A strange pull. A quiet instinct telling me to stop. Her kitchen was always her favorite place in the house. Warm, bright, a space filled with all the little routines that made her feel grounded. Morning tea, soft music, cutting vegetables with the same old knife she never replaced. I put my hand on the counter, letting memories rush in, and something caught my eye. The cabinet above the stove. It looked normal, ordinary, but something was off. The paint along the bottom edge was slightly darker, newer, barely noticeable. The kind of detail no one else would catch unless they'd spent years standing beside her while she cooked, talking about everything and nothing. I pulled a chair over and opened the cabinet. Inside, spices, oils, old jars, nothing strange. But then I noticed the back panel, a thin wooden board slightly misaligned like it had been removed and replaced. My pulse quickened. Carefully, I pressed on the edge. It budged. Another push, and the panel popped forward. Behind it, in the dark, was a small envelope, cream-colored, worn at the edges, and on the front, written in her delicate handwriting, "For my son." My heart stopped. For a moment, my entire body went still. The room shifted around me. The colors, the sounds, the weight of the world, everything blurred except that envelope. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. It felt warm somehow, like it had been waiting for me. Inside, I could see the outline of folded papers. One thin, one thicker. My throat tightened. I sat down at the kitchen table, placed the envelope in front of me, and just stared at it. This wasn't junk mail. This wasn't some forgotten note. This was intentional. She hid it. She hid it for me, because she knew. She knew there might come a moment when someone, my uncle, would try to twist everything, take everything, rewrite the truth. And she wasn't going to let that happen. Not if she could stop it, not even after death. Finally, with the kind of caution usually reserved for fragile glass, I opened the envelope and pulled out the first paper. It was a letter, handwritten. Her handwriting shaky, but still elegant. I took a breath and began to read. "My dear son, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer by your side." The words hit me like a fist to the chest. I blinked hard, forcing myself to keep going. "I need you to know something. You were my strength, my comfort, my pride. You were there for me in every moment that mattered, even when I didn't ask." My vision blurred. She knew. She always knew. "I didn't tell the family about all the help you gave me. Not because I wasn't grateful, oh, I was, but because I didn't want them to judge you or tell you that you were doing too much. I didn't want them to burden you with expectations. You helped me because you loved me, and that was enough." A tear slid down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. "I know your uncle will try to take the house. He has always wanted it. And he will say many things to convince others he deserves it. But he wasn't here. He wasn't present. He didn't hold my hand when I was scared." My jaw tightened. Every word she wrote cut through the lies he had told. That is why I made sure everything is clear. I unfolded the second paper. It was official looking, stamped, signed, her last will. And on the fourth line, in bold, "I leave my home and all its contents to my son." The room felt suddenly still, silent, as if the world itself paused to let me breathe again. Her handwriting continued below the signature, a final note. "Don't let anyone take what I have entrusted to you. You earned it, not with money, but with love. I pressed the papers against my forehead, letting out a shaky breath. This was it, the proof, the protection, the truth. She hadn't just left me a house, she'd left me her voice, her intention, her love made permanent in ink and paper. My uncle could say whatever he wanted. He could twist stories, he could raise his voice, he could pretend, but he couldn't erase this. He couldn't erase her. I folded the letter gently, placed it back into the envelope, and held it tightly in my hands. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I had a purpose, and now I was ready to face him. The next morning I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that wasn't grief anymore. It was determination. For the first time since my mother passed, I felt anchored, grounded. Her letter, her voice, was the only strength I needed. Even so, the house felt colder. The kind of cold that settles into the walls when a home realizes the person who warmed it will never return. I walked through the rooms slowly, holding the envelope in my hand like a shield. I knew what was coming next, and like clockwork, my phone buzzed. My uncle. His name lit up the screen, sharp and intrusive. I didn't want to answer, but I knew I had to. He wasn't the type to back down on his own. I picked up. "Well," he said immediately. No greeting, just entitlement, as usual. "I'll be coming to the house today. We need to talk about the property." His tone made it sound like the decision had already been made. I didn't respond right away. I needed a moment, just a moment to swallow the bitterness that rose in my throat. "Come by," I finally said, keeping my voice steady. "We'll talk." He didn't even say goodbye. He hung up. I looked around the living room, then at the photograph of my mother on the mantel. She was smiling softly in that way she always did, like she saw the good in everyone, even those who didn't deserve it. I hoped she could see me now, because this time I wasn't going to be quiet. I wasn't going to let the truth get buried under someone else's greed. My uncle arrived 20 minutes later, knocking loudly, impatiently, like he was trying to knock the door off its hinges. I opened it. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his eyes immediately scanning the room. Same old him, always searching for something to claim. "Let's get straight to it," he said, taking his jacket off. "I've talked to a few people, and they all agree the house should go to me. I visited her more. I helped her more." "That's not true," I said calmly. He stopped speaking, caught off guard by my interruption. I was never confrontational. He knew that. He relied on that. But today was different. "What do you mean it's not true?" he said, frowning. "You know your mother depended on me." I stared at him. For a moment, I truly wondered if he believed his own lies, or if he simply chose them because they benefited him. "I found something," I said. His eyes narrowed. "What?" I walked to the kitchen table, opened the envelope carefully, and pulled out the will, the official document first. I placed it on the table between us. He glanced at it, uninterested at first. Then his eyes moved down the page, line by line, until he reached that line, the line that ended everything he claimed. "I leave my home and all its contents to my son." His face changed instantly. The confidence drained, the entitlement slipped. His jaw tensed, eyes flicked up to me, then back down at the will. That can't be right," he stuttered. "It's her will," I said quietly. "Stamped, signed, notarized, legally binding." He shook his head aggressively, like he could shake the truth out of existence. I don't understand. She told me. She promised me. She said nothing, I cut in. And you know it. He froze. I could see the cracks forming in him. Confusion, anger, disbelief. But beneath it all, what stood out most was something I'd never seen in him before. Fear. The fear of losing something he believed he deserved. The fear of being exposed. The fear of reality replacing the version of the story he'd built for himself. He reached for the document, but I placed my hand on it first, steady but firm. "Wait," I said. "There's more." I opened the letter, the handwritten one, and laid it slowly beside the will. His eyes scanned the first few lines. I felt something shift in the room, like the air thickened. "My dear son," he read aloud, voice cracking slightly. He looked up at me. Something in him knew that letter destroyed whatever argument he thought he had. "She knew exactly what you would try to do," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "She knew you'd twist the truth. She knew you'd say you deserved the house. She knew you would try to erase everything I did for her." "That's not," he started. "She wrote it down," I interrupted. "She spelled it out. Every word, every memory, every truth." He swallowed, his face paling. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't angry. I was simply done being silent. "You weren't there," I continued. "You didn't drive her to the hospital at 2 a.m. You didn't sit with her during panic attacks. You didn't help her when she couldn't breathe. You didn't pay for her medication when she couldn't afford it." He took a step back. "You didn't hear her cry when she thought she was being a burden. You didn't comfort her when she thought she was running out of time." My voice grew softer, more controlled, more devastating. "You weren't there for the moments she needed someone the most." He looked down at the letter again, and something inside him broke. I saw it in his eyes, a mix of shame and frustration. He couldn't argue. He couldn't deny. He couldn't rewrite this. Not anymore. "This house is mine," I said quietly, "because she chose me. Not out of obligation, not out of tradition, but because I was there, because I loved her, because I showed up." He didn't speak, not a word. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. A strange, almost symbolic sound, steady, constant, like the truth itself. Finally, he took a shaky breath and straightened his posture, trying to regain some dignity. I didn't know," he said softly. "I know," I replied. "You didn't care to know." His eyes dropped to the floor. Then, without another word, he put on his jacket and walked to the door. He paused for a moment, his hand on the doorknob, as if he wanted to say something, an apology, maybe, or an excuse. But nothing came out. He opened the door and left, and for the first time since my mother's death, the house felt lighter, as if letting him go allowed the walls to breathe again. I sat at the table, the letter in my hands, and felt a rush of emotions, relief, sadness, gratitude. The truth was out. The fight was over, and she had won it for me. Even now, she was still protecting me. After my uncle left, silence settled over the house like a blanket. Not the suffocating kind that presses on your chest, but the quiet kind that feels earned. For the first time in days, the air didn't feel heavy. The walls didn't echo with tension. The rooms didn't carry the weight of a fight waiting to happen. Instead, the house felt like it exhaled, like it finally understood that the right thing had been done. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the envelope, running my fingers along its worn edges. The letter, the will, everything she left behind, felt like the last conversation I would ever get to have with her. and it was enough. More than enough. Eventually, I stood up and walked into the living room. The afternoon sun filtered through the sheer curtains, casting soft golden stripes across the floor. Dust floated through the beams of light, turning them almost magical. My mother used to love this room. She'd sit on the couch, a cup of tea in her hand, humming quietly as she watched the sunlight dance across the furniture. I could almost see her there, a faint outline, a memory more alive than the room itself. I walked over to the mantel and picked up her framed photograph. Her smile, gentle, patient, endlessly kind, hit me harder than any argument or confrontation ever could. "You did it, Mom," I whispered. "You were right. You protected me, even now." I placed the photo back carefully and let the silence fill the one-sided conversation. In the following days, I went through her belongings more slowly. No rush, no pressure, no urgency. Every drawer, every box, every old sweater smelled like her. Sometimes I had to stop sorting because the memories were too strong. Sometimes I smiled. Sometimes I cried. I kept what mattered. The little things, the meaningful things. Her recipe book with food stains on half the pages. The scarf she knitted the winter I went off to college. The birthday cards she saved, even the silly ones. The old teapot she refused to replace because new things don't have soul yet. These were the pieces of her I wanted to hold on to, not out of grief, but out of love. The house wasn't empty. It was full of her. It always would be. A few days later, my uncle called, not demanding, not angry, just quiet. "I wanted to apologize," he said, voice low. "I didn't know the whole story. I didn't understand how much you did for her." His words were clumsy, hesitant, but real. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. "Thank you for apologizing," I replied. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. Maybe not ever, but it was acknowledgement, and that was enough. He didn't bring up the house again, not once. That told me everything I needed to know. Weeks passed, and gradually I began to settle into a new kind of peace. I fixed things around the house. Small repairs my mother always said she'd get to someday. I repainted the living room. I planted flowers in the garden. I opened the windows and let the fresh air wash the place clean. Slowly, the house transformed from a monument of loss into a place of quiet warmth again. One evening, I sat on the porch steps, watching the sun dip behind the trees. A mug of tea warmed my hands. The neighborhood was calm, just birds, soft wind, and the distant hum of life going on. For the first time since she passed, I felt something I didn't expect. Home. Not the physical structure, but the feeling. The understanding that she was still here, in the walls, in the memories, in the choices she made long before she knew she'd be leaving me alone. I took a slow breath, letting the cool evening air fill my lungs. "I'll take care of it," I said softly, looking at the house behind me. "I promise." Not because it was legally mine, but because it was hers, her safe space, her pride, her world. And now it was my responsibility, my privilege to protect it. On a quiet Sunday, I framed the letter she wrote to me, not to put it on display, but to keep it safe. I placed it inside her bedroom drawer, the one she always kept her most precious things in. It felt right, like placing a heart back into a chest. Then I took one final walk through the house, opening each window, letting the sunlight fill every room. The living room, the hallway, the kitchen where she hid the envelope, the bedroom where she rested during her last weeks. Every corner carried a piece of her. And now, a piece of me. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was a story, a shared story. One she began, and I now had the honor of continuing. People say acceptance comes slowly, quietly, softly. And they're right. One morning, I woke up and realized that the grief didn't crush me anymore. It was still there. Grief never truly disappears, but it no longer defined the space around me. Love had replaced it. Her love, the kind that stretches beyond years, beyond death, beyond silence. I walked to the kitchen, poured a cup of tea, and smiled. Mom used to say, when you care for something, it becomes part of you. She was right about that. She was right about everything. The house, her house, didn't just belong to me. It became a part of me. A place where memories lived. A sanctuary built from years of laughter, worry, warmth, and quiet understanding. A place where her last words would echo long after the world forgot her voice. And as I stood there, holding my tea, morning sun painting the room gold, I felt a peace so deep it almost brought tears to my eyes. Not sorrow, not loss, just gratitude for her life, for her love, for everything she gave me, including the one thing she left behind to guide me after she was gone. Her final words, her truth, her home, mine now. Not because of inheritance, but because I earned it, the way she said, with love, always with love.